Mercedes and Toto Wolff reveals true development upgrade that bring crazy changes to the W14. So we're gonna be going through that and 5 other stories in today's video. So make sure to like this video, and if you want more Mercedes news content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel hitting that red button down below. The first story: Mercedes promised visible changes to W14 after challenging season opener and reveal development upgrade. Mercedes have shared more thoughts regarding their development plans for the 2023 season following a disappointing return at the season opening Bahrain Grand Prix, doubling down on the need to introduce radical modifications. Mercedes found themselves as the fourth best team behind Red Bull, Ferrari, and Aston Martin in both qualifying and race trim at Sakir, with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell finishing almost a minute away from victory in P5 and P7 respectively. After team principal Toto Wolff stated that Mercedes need to be bold with future updates amid questions over the squad's zero sidepod design, trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin opened up about what's next. People have tended to use the word concept when they mean the sidepod design, and Toto had said recently that we are looking at a revision that is going to come along in the next few races anyway, said Shovlin. Given the gap to the front, of course we are going to look at bigger departures and more radical changes, but those changes take time to turn into a faster solution in the wind tunnel. You can't do them overnight. There is quite a lot of development that you've got to do around any sort of big change in geometry in that area. Of course, we are looking at where we can improve the car. We are looking for potential to develop, and you will see visible changes coming on the car over the next few races. As for the biggest learning points Mercedes took away from the Bahrain opener, Shovlin pointed to significant tire degradation as a cause for concern, alongside their general lack pace. Ultimately, we've got a lot of work to do. That gap in qualifying was quite large. We were over half a second to the front. In the race, that was even bigger, he continued. That was compounded by the fact that when you get the tire degradation, you get a bit more sliding. The tires run hotter, and you end up finding it very difficult to keep them under any kind of control. There is a lot that we need to understand, but the key things are really getting on top of that long run degradation, which last year was a strong point for us. Clearly, we've got something that's not in the right place that we need to work on, but ultimately the other thing is that performance gap to the front. The raw pace of the car is not good enough. We are working very hard at the moment to understand what we can do in the short-term future and in the mid-term future to try and get ourselves in a better place. The second story: Lewis Hamilton already warned about George Russell threat after attitude problem claim. Both Russell and Hamilton endured problems last season as Mercedes slipped behind Red Bull and Ferrari after almost a decade at the front of the grid. Russell finished 35 points ahead of the 7-time world champion in 2022 thanks to his consistent top 5 finishes, notching Mercedes' only win of the year. He continued in the same vein in Bahrain Grand Prix qualifying last weekend, finishing 1 place ahead of Hamilton in P6. And speaking exclusively to Express Sport, Sky Sports F1 host Simon Lazenby claimed the reaction would be different if Hamilton finished behind Russell again in 2023. He said, "I think everything combined in that. Lewis probably wasn't as motivated as he could have been in the first half of last year. They worked together to develop the car. George was desperate to prove himself, so I think it was a combination of factors. Lewis Hamilton was beaten. This year, I think if it happens again, it might be a slightly different story. I've never seen look more physically fit. I've never seen him more determined." In the background of Mercedes' season, uncertainty over Hamilton's contract looms as he nears the end of the 2-year deal he signed in 2021. Some board members were said to be calling on Mercedes to give Hamilton's seat to Russell, who was at Williams at the time. With Russell now on the team, it would be interesting to see the reaction if the 25-year-old finished above the supposed #1 driver again. Mercedes aren't expected to challenge for the Drivers' Championship again this year. It could prompt Hamilton to make his own decision to walk away if the opportunity to enter a winning car and claim his record-breaking 8th world crown arises. The third story: Toto Wolff makes big Mercedes claim which will surprise Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes had some big decisions to make over the winter break, with the team needing to drastically improve their performance after finishing 3rd in the 2022 Constructors' Championship. The Silver Arrows decided to stick with their zero sidepod concept despite Ferrari and Red Bull proving in 2022 that their more detailed designs led to high performance. Following the Bahrain Grand Prix, Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has admitted that this choice was a mistake, as the team slipped behind Aston Martin to finish in P5 and P7 following Charles Leclerc's retirement from the race. Wolff has explained that his team will now begin to explore different development pathways before deciding how to proceed in 2023, having having finished 50 seconds being the race winner Max Verstappen in Bahrain. The W14 is currently slower than the Red Bulls, Ferraris and Aston Martins, but Toto Wolff has now revealed that Mercedes actually hit all of their targets over the winter when developing the car. "We set ourselves very high targets and we've achieved those high targets," he explained. "I think it's where we set those targets, all of us collectively, and how we need to maybe change the perspective, which is an interesting exercise. It is also something I'm looking forward to. I'd rather win every single race and continue to win championship after championship, but this is now the real challenge, and for me it is an interesting one, as painful as it is today. It is pretty clear where we should be going. We just need to make the data work, and I think the most important thing is re-establishing a baseline to say, this is where we are, and that there are no surprises in the other direction." Mercedes have reportedly brought former technical director James Allison back to the team to oversee the next wave of upgrades for the W14, which are set to arrive around the time of the Grand Prix in Imola. This decision increases the pressure on current technical director Mike Elliott, who has been heavily criticized by fans in recent weeks. The fourth story: Lewis Hamilton slams FIA for going in the wrong direction with F1 rule change. Lewis Hamilton slammed the FIA over its rule change to ban protest and political points on Formula One race weekends. Previously, drivers were able to use their platforms to express opinions on important social subjects such as discrimination and the environment. Hamilton has been one of the more prolific when it comes to exercising that right, as was the now retired Sebastian Vettel. But one of the biggest stories of the off-season emerged in December when the FIA changed the rules. In order for a driver to make a political, religious, or personal statement, they must now seek prior permission from the governing body. A failure to do so, or such an act after permission is denied, would see a driver punished. Hamilton made it clear he would not be changing his ways, and the F1 world waited with interest to see if a clash came up at the Bahrain Grand Prix, though no such conflict came. The Mercedes driver did wear a race helmet which featured, as part of the design, a rainbow flag in support of the LGBT+ community. But the FIA had no problem with it, and it became clear that it might only cause an issue if a stakeholder, for example, a race promoter or government official, raised it. Despite the lack of opposition to that gesture, Hamilton still criticized the FIA's move as he spoke to reporters in Bahrain. He said, "When I read that in the news, it tells me that we're going in the wrong direction. It is counter to what I've been trying to do with the team and in conversations with stakeholders within the sport. But I expect pushback. There are still individuals that don't fully understand or believe the importance of having an inclusive environment. I think my job and our job is to continue to highlight the positives it can have and mean of more it. I'm really happy that I've got Mission 44. We sorted that out, but now I'm working with the team and we've got these diversity charts that I've been working on with all the teams. Stefano is a great leader and is very family-orientated, very much understanding, and has already come out against what was said, so we will continue to work together in the right direction." The fifth story: Mercedes not expecting to be within reach of super dominant Red Bull in Jeddah. Mercedes reserve driver Mick Schumacher is hoping the team will be closer to Red Bull's pace in Saudi Arabia, but admitted they looked super dominant at the season opener in Bahrain. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell finished 5th and 7th respectively during the first race weekend of the year, but more concerning for Mercedes was their pace deficit to Red Bull, as well as the race pace of the Ferrari and Aston Martin cars, with Fernando Alonso having passed both drivers on track on his way to a podium finish. Given the former 8-time consecutive constructors champions had wanted to begin the season on a high in their quest to wrestle back competitive control in Formula One, team principal Toto Wolff described the race weekend as one of his worst in racing, with Mercedes left with work to do to get back to where they want to be. Trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin has since confirmed significant changes to the W14 are on the way, but the team's third driver is not expecting a quick turnaround to fight for the race victory in Jeddah this weekend. I mean, the Red Bull just looks super dominant. It looked really simple out there in some ways for Max and Chico, Schumacher told the F1 Nation podcast in Bahrain. I don't think that there's reason to believe that we'll be at their pace, but hopefully we'll be a bit closer. Hamilton claimed he hadn't been listened to regarding the development direction of the W14, and the team posted an open letter to their fans over the weekend expressing their hurt at how Bahrain panned out for them. But reserve driver Schumacher has backed Mercedes to bring the right upgrades to the car in the coming races. The German team's hopes of returning to the top in 2023 were dealt a huge blow at the first race, with Hamilton ending up down in 5th and 50.9 seconds behind race winner Max Verstappen. For him, I guess it was the moment that confirmed that really they were still really much on the back foot and hadn't made much or any progress in the winter period. Skiff said of the Bahrain Grand Prix on the latest edition of the Sky Sports F1 podcast. That for them is probably what is so hard to digest at this point. Lewis obviously, and he mentioned it in the Sky Sports exclusive with Simon Lazenby, and his lie detector test, is here for his 8th title. He's waiting and going to stay for it. But for him to be in this position is not putting him in any sort of position to get that 8th title. Despite a troublesome previous campaign, Mercedes opted to retain faith in its zero sidepod interpretation of the latest technical regulations. With the next Grand Prix on the way, Mercedes could take a podium finish in this race against Ferrari and Red Bull and might be able to take advantage of this. Lewis Hamilton still has a chance to win it all this year.